What's going on, everybody? Hope y'all are rocking and rolling today. People often wonder when I find time to do these podcasts, and it's 5 a.m. right now. And, if you want to do something, you'll make it a priority in your life. And this is something I had to get really real with myself on. So maybe I'll make an episode one day about productivity and just maximizing your schedule, because there's so much wasted time out there. But today I want to really challenge you leaders. I want to challenge you because I saw a post. I'm seeing all these posts now about leadership and creating culture. And, I saw this one. It has 10 qualities of a great leader. Right. And I was reading through these, and I just want to challenge you if you're in a leadership role. And I'm challenging me too, right? I saw these and it made me self-reflect a little bit. And one of the things that I think is just so important these days is just really getting real with yourself as far as what your capabilities are, who you are, what is truth, what are you going to stand for in this world? And, we talk and hear companies talk a lot about creating a better culture or improving culture, et cetera. Well, how you do that is through individual conversations every day, through every little decision that every leader at your company makes, who you're hiring, firing, promoting, demoting, et cetera. So, if you've got a bunch of people that are in quote unquote leadership roles that aren't doing or don't exhibit some of these qualities, right? You can be saying whatever, but your culture is going to suck. And that's just a fact. So I'm going to walk through these, not going to take a ton of time, just maybe expound on them a little bit. But number one, honesty. This is one that seems pretty straightforward. I really just question, though, how honest are leaders being with their people? Are they really telling their people, what is their career outlook? Are they being handcuffed by HR these days, with what they can and can't tell their employees? Are they really sitting down and having honest conversations with their people? Or are they withholding information? Because, you may think honesty is just, sharing true information, but, in my opinion, withholding information is dishonest as well. So, are leaders really being honest and creating an environment where their employees are safe to be honest with them and not feel like they're going to be, repercussions for coming forward with things? And again, companies they say all the right things, but do their behaviors actually back that up? Number two, delegate. How well are you as a leader delegating? How well, this says, identifying the strengths of your team and capitalizing on them. Find out what each team member enjoys doing most. So here's one. Have you ever even sat down and asked people what they like to do? Seriously, like when have you done that as a leader? Maybe you have. If you haven't, again, I'm sharing. I can share these because I'm guilty, right? So just hear my heart with these. How many times have you really sat down and gotten real with your people and asked them what they like to do? Or do you do more telling of people what to do or asking them to do things as opposed to figuring out how you can effectively leverage your team and their strengths and what they like to do? How can you not necessarily be involved in so many things, but actually, if you want to empower your people, right, actually empower them by delegating better, by giving some of your authority over to them to actually make some decisions, right? You can't just say, oh yeah, we want to empower our people and then take all their power away and not delegate tasks to them. So number 2, delegate. Number 3, communication. Being able to clearly and succinctly describe what you want done is extremely important, working towards the same goal. So just at, how many leaders have you had say, oh, I have an open door policy, right? I'm sure many of you have had leaders say those types of things. How many of those leaders actually had an open door half the time? Like physically. And yeah, like I get you can knock on the door and open it. No, we don't want to be rude because we're on phone calls all day and in meetings or whatever. But I just challenge, like, you leaders that say these things, that, have an open door policy, that, want that open, honest communication. How often do you actually reach out to your people and create a dialogue for open and honest communication? Or do you rely on company surveys, right? Like pulse checks or whatever you're calling them, right? To try to get information from your employees. Employees aren't stupid, right? When they get this, oh yeah, employee survey, it's totally confidential. Like, we know it's not confidential. This goes back to the number 1 honesty thing. How can you expect your employees to trust you when you as leaders are saying things to them like, oh yeah, fill out our survey, it's confidential, when it's not confidential? I mean, do you really expect us to believe that? This is, again, it goes to credibility, it goes to culture, it goes to honesty. These are just, again, this was a LinkedIn post I saw. I thought it was pretty good. Number 1, honesty. Are you being honest with your people? And that right there seems like dishonesty. So, that's going to harm your culture. Number 4, confidence, right? Keep up your confidence level and assure everyone that setbacks are natural. And the important thing is to focus on the larger goal. So does your leader instill confidence in you, or do they instill fear and doubt and uncertainty? Are you more comfortable talking to your leader about a problem you have, like your leader's actually going to help you solve it? Or are you more fearful that you're going to get in trouble for actually sharing what you're thinking? Something to think about. You as leaders, what kind of environment do you create on your team? Are you making your employees' lives easier and better? Or do you spend most of your time making your employees' lives harder and more difficult? Some things to think about. Commitment. There's no greater motivation than seeing the boss down in the trenches working alongside everyone else, showing that hard work is being done. To me, this is describing, it calls it commitment, but it's describing leading from the front. It's describing being the example. And every leader, right? You're not going to be able to sit back and just tell people what to do. You need to be that example. Now, I personally don't believe that has to mean you do everything down in the trenches per se, but there needs to be that willingness to where, you're working just as hard and doing the things that you would expect your people to do. You're exhibiting the behaviors that you want out of your people, right? So, I like this one. This one's huge. I also think there's a huge aspect to this culturally. And it's related to pressure and how we, instead of putting direct pressure on people as leaders, you can actually put something that I would call indirect pressure on people, which is, to me, it's like creating the pull. It's kind of like a team workout, right? If you have a people working out in a team environment, my wife does this actually at the gym up in Kingwood, Fit and 42. I had their owner on not too long ago, but they have a team gym environment, right? So, The team holds each other accountable. The team is working and the coaches work with them, right? And they see the other people working hard, so they want to work hard. And it creates that pull and that indirect pressure to where they don't have to necessarily say things to each other like, oh, pick it up and do this stuff. They do that, but that indirect pressure makes them want to go above and beyond for their team, right? For their leaders that they see doing the work. So this was a big one. Positive. How positive are your leaders? How positive are you as a leader? You want to keep your team motivated towards the continued success of the company and keep the energy levels up. How high are your energy levels at work? Is your company down? How often do you as leaders actually walk around and talk to your people? It just kind of goes back to communication. I think a lot of the positive energy problems can be solved with more effective, frequent communication. It's really easy as leaders to get busy and then just ignore our people and what they got going on. So, think about this one, being positive. What does that mean? Having a positive outlook, positive mental attitude in all situations. This is a tough one, but so important, right? You're gonna attract what you are. So are you positive, or are you a negative force? Creativity. Some decisions will not always be so clear cut. You may be forced at times to deviate from your set course. Pretty straightforward there. Being creative isn't necessarily straightforward these days, though, is it? In this age of innovation, I think a big one for me on creativity is simply being able to make quick decisions to deviate. Lots of times, we want to be nimble as an organization, but again, this kind of goes back to your culture. Leaders, I think, can be fearful of making decisions and taking ownership because they don't know how they're going to be held accountable, or what the repercussions of them taking that ownership is. And this goes back to your overall culture and delegating, giving responsibility. Do you really want a founder's mentality and want people taking ownership and making those quick decisions and adjusting for what the company really needs to be doing? If you do, then you need to figure out how you can actually reward behavior like that, incentivize behavior like that, instead of disincentivizing it by punishing people, or by, having people that step out, try to make these adjustments, deviate, and help the business, right? Like, you want people to do that. You want them to take ownership. That's the words we hear. So if you really want that, when they do it, you should reward it. And it shouldn't be oh, why'd you do that? We had this goal and you missed it. Well, it depends on the goal. It depends on why they missed it. And it depends on, who and how that was communicated. It depends on a lot of things, but it's not always so cut and dry. Like I said, some decisions will not always be so clear cut. So if you really want to empower your people, reward behavior like this. Reward people taking ownership and making quick decisions to improve the business, making adjustments along the way, if that's what you really want. Intuition. Number 8, you'll need to depend on your gut instincts for answers. Learning to trust yourself is as important as your team learning to trust you. To me, this is a self-confidence thing. How self-confident are you as a leader? And this really goes back to the work you're doing on yourself. And quite frankly, if you're not willing to read and grow and change, then you're not worthy of leadership, in my opinion. You just, I know too many people that, they're individual contributors in leadership roles. They've never really led anything, and they don't do any development on themselves. The extent of their development is binge watching Netflix. Truth, like this truth. So, when this says you need to depend on your gut instinct for answers, how are you going to have the self-confidence to really depend on yourself if you're not doing the work, if you don't know that you can depend on yourself, if you don't make commitments to yourself and keep them, if you don't have some self-discipline and show up for yourself to do the important things that you want to do, how about if you can't manage your schedule and you let your schedule manage you, right? Constantly I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, I'm in meetings all day. Well, whose schedule is it? Is it someone else's or is it yours? Like, when are you going to grow up and take ownership for your life and stop letting other people run your life? This may sound like a harsh one, but I think this one's so huge, right? You need to be willing to do the work to be the leader you admire. And that takes work. And if you're not willing to do that work, you really just got to start self-reflecting. But intuition, self-confidence, being able to depend and trust yourself that you're doing the right thing. I've struggled with this one. So again, that's why I can share this. I'm guilty of these. Inspire. Number 9. How many of you leaders actually deliberately or accidentally, right, are inspirations to your people? You probably don't know all the ways you inspire them, to be honest, but it says make your team feel invested in the accomplishments of the company, keep spirits up, and that begins with an appreciation for the hard work. So how often do you really show appreciation for your people? One of the techniques, I guess, that comes to mind on this one is, kind of going back to communication. Have you ever even asked your people what makes them feel valued, or if they feel valued, or how they can feel more valued? Or do you just tell them you're valued? Right? Okay. So, imagine you're an employee and you work your butt off for years, and, you get through COVID and it's like, tough times, right? We're not given raises and whatever. Oh, but you're very valued. Okay. Like, what does that even mean? So you're telling me all these words, but nothing you're actually doing is making me feel valued. And then, so what, like, people are just supposed to feel valued because you said it, or because they're lucky to have a job through COVID, or because why? What, did you even ask them what would make them feel valued? Is there, this kind of goes back to, again, that communication, which is just so important, right? Like, have you even communicated to your people what motivates them or makes them feel happy? And I'll go back to a story from early in my career. I had a young engineer I was working with who was struggling with motivation. They were telling me about, I was kind of a mentor for this individual, even though we were close to the same age, but they were telling me that they were struggling with motivation. And I just was like, I was dumbfounded. I was like, dude, we pay you engineer salary. Like, what else do you need to be motivated? And it was just so ignorant on my part from a leadership perspective. It was a really, really bad example that I set as a leader. There's like this expectation of like, okay, we pay you, so you just do the thing. And there's no expectation of a leader to actually make you like your job or want to do it, or create an environment where you want to do it. Like, no, that individual is struggling with motivation. And what I should have done, even though I wasn't even this person's leader, right? But what we should do as leaders is ask our people, what motivates you? What would make this job more enjoyable for you? Maybe I can't give you the salary that you want, if that's a motivator. It's rarely a motivator, by the way, the direct salary. Maybe it's that they just don't feel appreciated. They don't feel like their work's actually adding value to the company. Maybe you can give them some perspective, show a little bit more appreciation. Maybe, you give them some flexibility to leave early on some days. Like, there's so many things you can do as a leader if you actually asked your people what they would want. And then if you ask your people what they want and you actually give it to them, right, they're going to love you. This is kind of a leading from the front thing. Like, they're going to want to go through a brick wall for you, right? So, this is a super, super important one, inspire, making your team feel invested in the company. And you don't do that by saying stuff. And this is where I see leadership going wrong these days. Like, we're hearing a lot of words, but we're not actually seeing behaviors. And that just creates, back to number one, honesty. If that's what's happening, that's going to destroy your culture faster than anything. So the worst thing you can do if you want to improve culture is talk about culture. The best thing you can do if you want to improve culture is get your leadership on the same page and start making better decisions. Start treating your employees better. Start asking better questions. Start communicating better. Start developing yourselves and working on yourselves more and doing the work to be self-confident, to make those decisions and take ownership that needs to be done, right? Keeping a positive mental attitude all the time, right? Through all this craziness. That's what we can be doing. Being examples, leading from the front, creating that pull, creating indirect pressure, right? We, at the bottom levels of employees all the way up to the top, need to all be doing this. And number 10, approach, have the ability to customize your approach based on person by person basis, based on the situation at hand. Again, this goes back to communication. Like, leaders need to do the work to develop the skills to be able to talk to their people and do more listening than they do talking. Ask better questions and you'll get better answers. So I challenge you, leaders, how many questions have you even asked your employees lately? Or you just do a lot of telling? You have meetings with your employees, you have weeklies. Is your question, so what's going on? And you just expect your employees to bring stuff up? Do you ask them questions to generate conversations? Do you ask them if they feel valued? Do you ask them if they feel appreciated? Do you ask them how you can make their life easier? Do you ask them what challenges you can take off their plate? Do you ask them if they're overworked? Are you asking them these questions? Do you ask them how you can challenge them more or make them feel more excited? Do you ask them how you are as a leader? Do you ask them for feedback one-on-one? Or do you just send out a corporate survey and lie to them that it's anonymous? Because they're not anonymous, right? So, you're going to get a better gauge of your employees from one-on-one conversations with leaders than you ever will from a survey. So I encourage you, leaders out there, real talk. Again, I can say these things because I'm guilty. If you haven't done some of these things, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Far from. Don't expect me to be perfect. But if you're not doing these things, I just challenge you as leaders. This list of 10: honesty, delegate, communication, competence, commitment, positive, creativity, intuition, inspire, approach. How often are you deliberately doing some of these things? And how are you doing it? And are your words matching up with your actions? And are you creating the incentives for your employees to want to do more, be more, serve more? How do you create the environment organically? By just your actions. And, if those actions follow your words, then you're going to see your culture change. Love y'all. Go lead everything.